Hello, my friends. We're going to analyze the compatibility of David Gest and Liza Minnelli, two celebrities who got married way back in 2002. The wedding was a very grand affair with lots of celebrities. The marriage lasted only 16 months, and now over 20 years later, Liza Minnelli says she still has post-traumatic stress disorder, really bad symptoms, and still processing stuff from over 20 years ago. This marriage was so horrific. It was just so stressful. She's still dealing with the effects of it. So we all know the phrase, a marriage made in heaven. We're going to see this marriage made in hell, the astrological configurations that inclined this marriage to be so bad. And the ideas I'm going to present to you are built on ideas that are presented in another video called Keys to Compatibility. That's a two-part series, and it's part 2, Keys to Compatibility part 2, where I describe the research that was done on over 20,000 married couples, the model that was built. So we're using modern research methods to develop these ideas, and also the research into bipolar disorder, which gave very high statistical significance, relatively good effect sizes, as we call them, in understanding the astrological configurations that make a person vulnerable to bipolar disorder and the ways that those configurations get triggered. And here we're going to look at the application of these ideas in a relationship, and this is what we're going to see. We're going to see that there's a planetary configuration in the birth chart of David Gest, an extremely similar planetary configuration in the birth chart of Liza Minnelli, and those two configurations collide. This is extremely powerful. If you have a planetary configuration, a large energetic system, you meet somebody with a very similar energetic system, obviously you have a lot in common. And then there's a way that they can overlap. And then if they overlap, watch out. It leads to huge, strong results for better or worse. In this case, for worse. So this is part of an evidence-based practice to develop the ideas using modern research methods and then apply them. And if you're interested in this evidence-based astrology movement, I highly recommend getting involved, participating in the services provided by Cosmobiology Institute. The website is cosmobiology.org. There are free monthly meetings. The first conference is April 24 to 26 in 2026 in Nashville, Tennessee. This is a live in-person conference. If you're watching this video 5 years into the future or later, probably there will be ongoing conferences that you can participate in. So just to let you know a little bit about this evidence-based astrology movement and some of the activities that are available, ways you can participate, learn, and if you get involved, contribute to this movement. Okay, here's the planetary configuration. Let's start with David Gest. It's 11 vibe. Both of them have very strong 11 vibe configurations, and they collide with each other. Well, collide is kind of a negative word, and here it's kind of a collision, but they connect. That connection can be positive or negative. We're going to see why this configuration inclined to be so negative. Okay, but let's analyze what this configuration is. This is the 11 vibe chart or 11th harmonic chart. It shows these planetary configurations that are in the birth chart where planets are in 11ths of a circle. It's like a wave of 11 beats through the chart. And what we see in this 11 vibe chart are Sun opposition Mars. So there's Sun at 20 Libra, Mars is at 21 Aries. Again, this is in the 21 vibe chart. It's not the birth chart. So if you're looking at the birth chart and saying, well, that's not where Sun and Mars are, that's because I'm looking at the 11th. We often call it a harmonic, 11th harmonic chart, or 11 vibe charts. Different words for the same thing. Sun is opposition Mars, and it makes a T-square with Pluto. Now, what really interested me when I looked at this configuration, even more than the Sun-Mars making a T-square with Pluto, are these green lines going to Uranus. So Mars is sextile Uranus. Sun is trine Uranus. Why does that get my attention? Because Uranus in 11 vibe, in other words, when Uranus aspects planets in 11 vibe, it's one of the most unstable things you can have in your chart. Because Uranus is unstable, it's spontaneous, it's improvising, it doesn't like to hold on to the past. And the 11 vibe is very moving, very on the go, very restless. So here you have Uranus connecting to Mars. Obviously, if you're a student of astrology or a professional astrologer, Mars, Uranus, and 11 vibe, and the Sun involved. And it looks like it's very tight. The lines are fairly thick. We see the Sun at 20 degrees, Mars at 21, Uranus at 20. They look like they're within about a degree orb. So what we can do, this is a principle in vibrational astrology, is when we see these trines, we multiply the vibration by 3. So 11 times 3 is 33. We're going to look at the 33 vibe. What that does is it changes the trine to be a conjunction. It like collapses all the things that are multiples of 33 into conjunctions. So it simplifies the visualization of it. If you're not familiar with this, don't worry about that too much. Just keep this in mind. I'm going to zoom in. That's all you need to know. I'm going to take this 11 vibe and zoom in a manner that lets me look at this Sun, Mars, Uranus in a way that's simpler. And here's what happens when I zoom in. When I zoom into 33 vibe, up here in the top of this chart, in the upper right corner, it says 33rd harmonic. So in other words, I'm in the 33 vibe. I see the Sun, Uranus opposition Mars. Wow. If you have any knowledge of astrology at all, that sounds unstable. It is unstable. And in an 11-based vibe, like 11 times 3, it's highly unstable. Is unstable bad? No. It allows you to improvise. It allows you could be a jazz musician. You could be a comedian. You can improvise. You can just be spontaneous. You can flow. You're out of the box. You'll be innovative. It's neither bad nor good. We have to see what habits the person has developed with that energy. But this is a challenging configuration. A lot of people don't handle this extremely well. But it can, of course, be channeled in a very positive way. Now we notice another trine aspect jumps in here. Mars is trine Saturn. Okay, well anyway, the main thing is the Sun, Mars, Uranus. Now let's look at Liza Minnelli. I said at the beginning that they have similar planetary configurations. We're going to look at her 11 vibe chart, and guess what 3 planets we're going to see? You can probably guess because I already told you the charts are similar. Okay, so here's Liza. A Sun, I'm laughing because they're so similar. It's amazing. Her Sun is opposition Mars and Uranus. Now this is her 11 vibe. It's in David Gest's 11 vibe. He has the Uranus trine and sextile. When you multiply by 3, it looks almost identical to this. Sun, Mars, Uranus. This is extremely similar. They both have Sun, Mars, Uranus configurations in their 11 vibe charts. Wow. Okay, so what does that tell us? It tells us that this relationship is going to thrive on spontaneity, innovation, change, breaking old patterns. Now, Liza also has, you probably already noticed, Neptune involved. Sun, Mars, Uranus, Neptune. It spreads a little bit, but it's pretty darn tight overall. Well, this is highly inspired. You know, you have a Mars-Neptune opposition, a Sun-Neptune conjunction. The person's living for a dream. They cannot live a life that's too mundane. Well, she's a singer, an actress. Her life is visionary. So it's not mundane. That's good. It's inspired. But a Sun, Mars, Uranus, Neptune configuration with these hard aspects in 11 vibe gives us a concern that especially if she's had a lot of stress in her life or trauma in early life, and sometimes even without that, if she starts taking sleeping pills or something like that, or recreational drugs even, drinking too much alcohol, getting really drunk, this can become very unstable. It's like an old-fashioned radio with a tuner. Like, you got to tune it just right. If you don't tune it just right, it's sort of unstable. It's frenetic. It can't sit still. It gets off center. So she needs something inspiring, but also that's going to keep her stabilized, you might say. So there's a lot of spiritual inspiration. She needs minimal disturbance to her system. It's almost necessary to function well. Well, she did have problems with alcohol and drugs. Okay, now we have something that looks really scary. We have this unstable system in a person with a history of unstable relationships, using drugs and alcohol excessively. Not good. And then she marries someone who has Sun, Mars, Uranus. We don't have a good momentum here to straighten this out. Does it mean that this marriage is definitely made in hell? No, but it's heading that way. It's like a car going fast, heading towards a brick wall. They're going to have to change. If they met impulsively, they're marrying impulsively, if it's all wild and crazy, we can see that momentum is in place. It doesn't look good. That's exactly what happened. Now, we did the 33 vibe of David Gest. Let's look at it for Liza. This is her 33. And we still have the Sun, Mars, Uranus, Neptune. The orbs become 3 times bigger. So the Uranus-Neptune's moved out of orb. And what we see in her 33 vibe, because we want to see how they're vibing together. The 11 vibe, they have similar configurations. Does it look similar in 33 vibe? Actually, hers looks a little more potentially positive. She has a Jupiter-Pluto conjunction, sextile Mars, trine the Sun, indicating she wants to achieve big things. She's impatient, 11 vibe, on the go for going big, not holding back. What kind of wedding does she have? One of the most elaborate, media-driven weddings you could have. Who was there? Like all kinds. Michael Jackson was there, right with them. He's friends with both of them. One of the most popular people at the time. Very expansive. Jupiter-Pluto all the way. So her Jupiter-Pluto energy is involved making this grand wedding. They're all excited with all this spontaneous excitement. But even though she's got this Jupiter-Pluto for this grand approach and making it big, we have to keep in mind they both have Sun, Mars, Uranus in 11 vibe. And if either of them has a history of sudden upsets, nasty, impulsive things happening, this is a recipe for disaster. I don't know what his history is. I didn't read his biography that carefully, but Liza had a history of, like I said, instability with drugs, alcohol, etc. Probably has some history of instability as well. It's just showing that this is real. When you see it in the chart, when you read about it in their biographies, you go, oh my God, this is a powerful, powerful energy. Very difficult to take it and rechannel it all of a sudden in a positive way. And the theme of the relationship will be spontaneity, excitement, surprises, possible accidents, explosions, upsets. Handled positively, they could be wild, crazy innovators together doing amazing things that have never been done before. and enjoying it. Now, let's see if they overlap. We take the two 11 vibe charts. We've got David, his 11 vibe in the center, in the inner ring. We have Liza's 11 vibe in the outer ring. And we see that in the outer ring, her Sun opposition Mars-Uranus at about 27 to 29 degrees is about 7 to 9 degrees past his Uranus. Now, we have strict rules in vibrational astrology, which is a system I use. 8-degree conjunctions in synastry are weak. We like orbs that are half as big in synastry as we use in the natal chart. We allow a 16-degree orb in the natal. It means we're going to allow about 8 degrees in synastry. It's out the outer limits of the orb, barely influencing each other. So let me emphasize this too. We're an evidence-based system. We don't like to jump around and change our rules with every chart. We built these rules using modern research methods, extensive application of them. We're not going to just drop them and be so flexible with each one. Our conclusion is there's not a great overlap. Now, that does not fit their experiences, because 20 years after the marriage, she's still, processing, healing from this. He has passed away, and with all the Sun, Mars, Uranus, that doesn't totally surprise us. These are like fuses that just can explode. She's still alive and doing well. She's 80? She's 80 years old now. So there isn't a lot of overlap. You see his Sun, Mars, Uranus at 20 degrees, her Sun, Mars, Uranus at 26 to 29 degrees. Okay, now, there are two things. First one is the synastry, this overlapping of the charts, is not as important as the composite chart. Why do I say that so definitively? That the composite chart is actually more powerful than the synastry. Not a popular idea in astrology. A lot of people don't even use the composite chart. It's a modern invention. It's more powerful. The reason I say that is because in the research on the 20,000 married couples, the composite chart showed up much stronger than synastry. So in an evidence-based practice, we use the best evidence available. The best evidence we have at the moment is that the composite chart is stronger. Do we know that absolutely? Might we change our minds in the future? No, we don't know it absolutely. We could change our minds. It's an evidence-based practice. Using modern research methods, our best understanding is the composite chart is strongest. And, as I mentioned in the discussion below, there's a link to that video on the research on the composite chart, which you can watch later if you want to. Where am I here? This is the composite 11 vibe chart. So we want to look at the composite 11 vibe. It's even more important than the synastry. And we see a Saturn-Uranus conjunction with a 7-minute orb. In my notes, I say 5 minutes. It's 7 minutes. It's extremely tight. Saturn-Uranus is the most disturbing configuration you can have in 11 vibe. Saturn-Uranus in 11 vibe is the most prone to be full of surprises. Things don't turn out the way. There's a change, the need for a sudden change. However, we have another rule. We need a third planet. And the third planet here is Jupiter. Well, Jupiter with Saturn-Uranus tends to be not so difficult. It tends to soften it up because it gives it more flow and openness. So we do have a very strong Saturn-Uranus, but we do not have a third planet that we think would make it really strong. So right now, we are not yet seeing the extreme instability. We see that both of them have unstable patterns. They're not overlapping, And in the composite chart, this is not strong enough to be a serious problem. We have strict rules. We need 3 or more planets. Now, we do see a semi-sextile, a little green line coming from the Saturn-Uranus, and they're at 24, 25. It looks like it's probably going to Mars at 24. And a rule that we do use that's important is we use very high vibrations. Once we see something in 11 and 33, and we see an orb of only 7 minutes, means it's going to stay an orb in these higher overtones. We use higher overtones. In the bipolar disorder research, we had 88 vibe, even 176, 11 times 8, 11 times 16. I know that sounds crazy to astrologers, but that's what we're seeing. So maybe there's a higher overtone. So let's multiply by 3. That would make this, if there is a semi-sextile, it looks like there is, it's going to make it a more obvious aspect. By zooming in, it makes the aspects more visible. So let's see if the Mars to Saturn Uranus becomes clearer when we look at the 33 vibe of the composite chart. Bam! There it is. Wow! There it is. And this is exactly the rules we use. The rules we use are composite chart is strongest, high vibes are very powerful. The high 11 vibe, and it's really not even that high, it's only 33. We go way higher than that. Built from the 11, Mars is square to Saturn-Uranus conjunction. As I mentioned before, because that Saturn-Uranus conjunction has such a tiny orb of 7 minutes, the orb is still tiny, still very small, about a third of a degree. It's 22 minutes. Extremely strong Saturn-Uranus conjunction, now square Mars, all within less than 2 degree orb. Whoa, Mars, Saturn, Uranus? This is shocking. This is like the worst possible scenario. You have these two people with Sun, Mars, Uranus, and 11 vibe. And she's got Neptune involved with it. This kind of, like wild, innovative, can't stick to anything, any kind of schedule or anything. They get together, and now the way that it connects is Mars, Saturn, Uranus? Oh my God. This is almost, it's almost fated. I mean, this is really hard to change. It's hard to change this momentum towards explosiveness, anger, fights. There's just wanting to break free. So, in order for this relationship to work, they would have to understand this. They would have to find ways to channel in positive ways. They would have to use tremendous willpower and attentiveness to just consistently be kind to each other. And I make a note here at the bottom, lower right corner in the notes. Keep in mind that the composite chart is a resonance chart. Another name for composite chart is resonance chart. It's not a third chart just created magically out of two charts. That's the original thing people said about the composite chart. What we understand, and it's explained in tons of tutorial videos I've made on the nature of the composite chart, it's showing powerful resonances between the charts. That's why it makes so much sense that it was found to be strongest when we did the research on married couples. The theory, the observations, it all fits together beautifully. Okay, so we look at this most powerful connection between the vibration that they have so much in common with, and it's even worse than in their birth charts. The birth charts is Sun, Mars, Uranus. This is Saturn, Mars, Uranus. In the accident research we did, I've got tutorial videos on accident research, Mars, Saturn, Uranus, one of the biggest indicators of accidents when that's going on. Wow. Yikes. And one other thing about this composite chart is that if you change this chart from the tropical zodiac to the sidereal zodiac or the draconic zodiac, there's very little change to the composite chart. Trines will sometimes turn into sextiles. There's little minor changes. It's resonances that are really there. The synastry, when we overlay those two charts, it depends on the zodiac. This thing, let's go back to it. This synastry, this overlaying of charts, if you do the sidereal or the draconic chart, the relationships change completely. So one of the reasons why this composite chart is so powerful, I mean, the theory for understanding why it is so powerful is because it's independent of the zodiac. These are actual resonances between the angular distances between the planets. That's not true with synastry. Synastry depends on what zodiac you're using. And there are a lot of possible zodiacs: draconic, tropical, etc., sidereal, and so on. Now, just for fun, we'll look at the 44 vibration. We just look at 11 times 3, we'll look at 11 times 4. What happens is the Mars becomes trine the Saturn Uranus. I'm really just showing this for educational purposes. Let me go back to 33. When you see a square in a soft vibe, 11 times 3, it'll become a trine in the hard vibe, 11 times 4. Because what you're looking at is 11 times 3 times 4. In the 11 times 3 chart, which is what we're looking at here, 33, 11 times 3, the aspect is 4. Got it? The chart is 11 times 3, the aspect is 4. If I look at the 11 times 4 chart, 44, it'll be a trine. It's 11 times 3 times 4 is the vibration going on between of Mars to the Saturn-Uranus conjunction. So again, here I have the 44 vibe, in other words, the 11 times 4, and it's a trine. In other words, what we're looking at is 11 times 3 times 4 is the vibration of the Mars times Saturn-Uranus. I'm going to take this 44, multiply it by 3, which is 132. So I'm going to take the 44 times 3, which in other words is 11 times 12, and let's look at it in the 132 vibe, just to confirm, and sure enough, they're all conjunct. Now, if they were conjunct very tightly, and there was a fourth planet involved, they'll be even stronger. That does not happen here. It's already out of this world, overpoweringly strong. Let me summarize. He has Sun, Mars, Uranus, and 11 vibe. They're aspected. She has Sun, Mars, and Uranus aspect in 11 vibe. We look at the most important connection between those 11 vibes, which is the composite chart, and we have in overtones of the 11 vibe a Mars, Saturn, Uranus spreading less than 8 degrees in the 132 vibe. That's tight because we allow a 16-degree orb. It's there. This is a disaster. This is a marriage made in hell. I mean, in order for them, with the history, the momentum, the habits that they have, to take an explosive energy like this and get it to work nicely, and they're not even aware of the need to do this, well, then it's definitely not going to happen. It's just not. She's doing we saw in her 33 vibe, the Sun, Mars, Jupiter, Pluto, the big wedding, the big hoopla. They're just letting that energy flow. And it's just going to spin out of control. Over 20 years after that marriage, which lasted a little over a year, she's still negatively impacted. Relationships are so important. We have to be very careful who we bond with. Very, very careful. Because they can make or break us. And, understanding it from vibrational astrology, we are energy flow. That's what we are. There is no I underneath that energy flow. We're transmitters of energy flow. And the way we bond with other people sets up what that energy flow is. And all energy has positive potential, but you have to look at what the habits, what the momentum is, where things are headed. This is a marriage made in hell, based on the lifestyle, the orientation of the people to their lives, what they're understanding, and that's what happened. That's exactly what happened. So when Liza Minnelli says, oh my God, it's over 20 years later, and I'm still have, I'm whacked out from this. She's not whining and complaining. She's not a baby, oh, poor me, poor me. People say, oh, if I was as rich as you, I wouldn't be crying. No, she's not a big baby. She has suffered in that relationship. It has wrecked her life. Why am I so sure of that? Because I can see the energy flow. And that's one of the beautiful things about vibrational astrology. You see it. You can tell what's underneath the words of the people. So when she says that this has been hell, yes, it has been. It has been. And it gives, it evokes from me a lot of empathy. Like, if I was dealing with those planetary configurations and I didn't understand what was going on, as you can see, the astrology is like an X-ray machine that can go in and see these energetic patterns. It's very, very sad. You could say it could happen to anyone. So that's what we're seeing, and that's why this research and these investigations and the development of this is so important, and why I work on it all the time, because we are really discovering something. This is not just a joke. It's not a parlor game. We have data-driven evidence. This stuff really exists, and we can feel it and see it in people's lives. Okay, so we are at a little over half hour, which is where I like to stop, and it's a perfect stopping point because, excuse me, I have a subtitle here to this section, a fascinating addendum. An additional thing. I've covered some of the essentials here. Let's review that there are very similar planetary configurations in 11 Vibe for these two people, and what goes on between them. The composite chart's more important than the synastry, and it's even, quote, worse than the birth charts. Mars, Saturn, Uranus. Marriage made in hell. This is about, you can't even imagine it being much worse than this in terms of the likely outcome based on their energy flow and the difficulty of these astrological configurations. But there's one more very, very, very cool thing I want to show you. Totally cool. That even adds even more to this. We don't need any more to make this a marriage made in hell. But there's a very fascinating thing, and it helps us understand a little bit more about how to do synastry properly. I'm going to leave that to the second half of this. It'll be a two-part series of videos on David Gest and Liza Minnelli. Thank you very much for listening, my friends. God bless. Namaste.